Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So, I think I mentioned if you were on stream earlier today with the Nintendo Direct, this video is not going to be entirely dated, but it's a little dated because Homestuck is almost over, and I've been doing Homestuck for a long time. So, finding something to replace it with is going to be a little bit of a challenge, you know? Especially something that you guys are also going to enjoy. So I figure, why don't I just tell you the games I have? And then you can figure it out. So this week we're starting with my entire Steam library, which isn't as big as some people's, I'm sure. Apparently it's at 99 games, which is very funny. One away from 100. So yeah, I'm just going to go through it all and talk about the games and how much I enjoyed them. And some games, like, they would probably not be good on replay, but some would. And a lot of the, like, high-profile ones I actually have never played. So this should be fun, all right? And then next time I'm going to do everything else, I guess, which is, like, the Switch library or games I'm looking at in general. So let's actually just say games I'm looking at playing next we'll do next week, right before the poll. Or, I don't know, I'll figure it out somehow. And then right now I'm just giving you a bunch of extra options you can add in there. So like the Ace Attorneys and the Danganronpas and stuff, they're probably going to be in there already. But this is extra, okay? So let's start with A Date in the Park. Some of these games are really obscure. I had a time period where I'd just go on Steam every week and just buy a cheap game and play it. So there's a few games like that in here, and they vary in quality drastically. A Date in the Park, I do believe, it's like pixelized photos. It's been a long time. This period was not recently. This was like 7 years ago. It's pixelized photos, and it's like a mystery game with like a horror-esque twist. There's some sort of monster, I think. I think it fits well and it's playable. You can tell it's like sort of an indie project, you know, it's not super complex. And there's some segments where you have to do a very specific thing in order to progress. I do remember that being a frustration. But, I mean, for, like, the $2 or whatever it was, actually, that'd be kind of fun. I could tell you how much they cost for games that you probably don't know. So let's see. This is Date in the Park. I'd have to go to the store page, wouldn't I? How quickly can I get there? Store page. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's free to play. So for free, I mean, what can you say? It's pretty interesting. It's kind of... I'm going to save this game for the end, okay? Absent. This is another one of those games. It's a puzzle-solving game, I think, where there's, like, an alternate dimension crossing into this dimension or something like that. I don't think I actually played all the way through this one because I got stuck and quit. So, that's something. This is also free to play. Okay, so maybe I wasn't buying cheap games. I was just playing free to play games. That makes sense. I think it goes in. It's playable. Honestly, I feel like Date in the Park is definitely better than that. So, kind of shaping up here. AI Somnium Files. I never actually played it. I bought it to maybe play on the channel, but I've never actually played it. So, that's an option for sure. Among Us. I have some problems with Among Us. I feel like it's fairly unbalanced sometimes. And it really rewards you for just, I guess, being very obtuse, which kind of makes the game annoying. Yeah, I don't know. But it's still very fun. as the social deduction games go, I still think it's the best formula. Maybe it just needs some refining to be like perfect. I played Bioshock Infinite on my Xbox 360, okay? And then I was like, Bioshock's great. And look, there's a bundle on sale. I'll play more Bioshock. And then I never did. So, I know they're good. I just haven't ever got around to playing them. Bloons Tower Defense 6. I love Bloons Tower Defense. This game, I mean, honestly, I don't think I really have any problems with it for what it is, you know? As a Bloons game, yeah, it's pretty much the ultimate Bloons game. If you have no idea what Bloons Tower Defense is, it's basically it's a similar sort of thing. When I was growing up, the two tower defense games were Bloons Tower Defense and Pokemon something Tower Defense. And I really wanted to play the Pokemon one, but I could never get it to work, so I had to play Bloons. But essentially you have like monkeys, they serve as your like attackers, and then you have to prevent balloons from overwhelming the level and getting to the other side. And you upgrade them, and there's like a super monkey, and this one introduced like heroes, which I'm not super into that mechanic, but everything else it does is really good, so I can't complain. Borderlands pre-sequel. Never played it. I didn't even know I had this game. That's another fun thing of doing this, is there are a few games here that I did not know I even owned. Castle Crashers. This does have some issues, I think. Specifically just some characters being really a lot better than others. I used to play this game with my friends all the time. And I still think it's a great experience if you've never played it. But, you know, it definitely rewards people who know which characters are better. This isn't like a PvP game necessarily, though there are parts where you do fight the other knights to win the princess's favor. But it can be pretty tricky sometimes if you're playing a character that you just picked because you like the color of the character. I'm pretty sure specifically I would play Green Knight, and Green Knight has poison magic, which just sucks ass, if I remember correctly. And so my friend would always pick Red Knight, who's got like the best magic, and be like, man, why? Come on, you got to keep up with me. I'm like, I'm trying. So maybe that's a me problem more than anything. But I mean, that's one of the main four characters. You'd think they could balance at least them. But yeah, other than that, really funny art style, fun gameplay for the most part. Even though it's like a masher, it's probably my favorite beat 'em up game of all time. So yeah. Cave Story. Never actually played it. So it's there. Chrono Trigger, probably my favorite RPG of all time. And I'm still shocked to this day that it hasn't got a remake yet, honestly. Like, it is prime for a remake. It's the closest I've ever got to consuming anything related to Dragon Ball. And I really don't want to spoil anything about it, but it's got great twists. I mean, the premise is obviously you're traveling through time, like it's a time travel RPG. Really fun in terms of the characters and the settings. Have I ever beat it? I gotten close, but you'll see with a lot of these games, even with Tears of the Kingdom right now, I'm like right near the end and I just run out of steam. It's just something that happens to me. I've played through like the bulk of Chrono Trigger like 5 times, but have I ever beat it? Nope. Cuphead. Oh boy. Where do I put Cuphead? I think I put it in Peak Fiction. Technically, there is one big issue, which is that one plane level against the robot. I feel like that is the only boss that feels unfair. I feel like everything else you can adapt to the patterns and sort of win, you know? But that one boss is just like a bullet hell, and if it was like with your normal character movement, that would be fine. But because it's in the plane, and there's only like 2 other plane levels, you're at like a total skill deficit at that point. So yeah, Dr. Ivo's robot or whatever that is. That's the only blight on this game I have where it feels like it's unfair and not just difficult. Anyway, crazy art style. I hope they continue now that Cuphead is done and do something even crazier, you know? City Skylines. This is a good game. It's basically the sequel to, or the spiritual successor, rather, to SimCity, which I used to play SimCity a lot as a kid. We had SimCity 2000. And I was never very good at it, and I'm still not great at City Skylines, I'll be honest. But, does it have any big issues? Or do I just like it? No, I think City Skylines is good. For what it is, yeah, I can't complain. Borderlands 2. Okay. I feel like this has to go here. I really liked Borderlands 2 as a teenager. It's a little hard to go back to now, just because the style of humor that it is employing has become so passé. In terms of, it's like that Marvel quippy sort of humor that everyone is sick of in the across the entire globe, probably. Maybe. And honestly, if I was going to play a shooter, like a game where you shoot a gun, I would not play Borderlands, probably. I would probably go back to playing Halo. So yeah, I mean, I like it still. I think it's a good game, but I'm probably never going back to it ever again. I always played Zero. Which character did you play? Civilization 6. Oh, this has to go here, okay? Civ 6 is cool, but I've grown up playing Age of Mythology and Age of Empires. Those are the RTSs I played. So naturally, when I started up Civilization 6, I was like, okay, well, just to, like, you know, get my feet wet or whatever, I'll do, like, a military build, right? We'll do the traditional sort of, like, take over the other cities, blah, blah, blah. That is almost completely unfeasible, it feels like. When I started another save file and tried to do, like, a culture victory or a science victory, it felt way better. Which, it feels so weird to have a game like Civ 6 and to have the military option, which you need to have a military in this game because people will still attack you, be the worst option. I mean, is that good morally? Maybe, but I don't know. And maybe I'm totally wrong because obviously I'm not like a super skilled player. It was literally my first time playing the game. But it left a sour taste in my mouth for that one reason. But the rest of the game, I really have no complaints. It's fun. It just seems weird to have the most obvious option be wrong. You know? That's just my feeling on it, though. Cluster Truck. This game was big on YouTube, like, 12 years ago. Basically, it's a game where there's a bunch of trucks on a road, and you have to jump between them while they're, like, crashing. You can kind of see that from the image. It's a game. There's nothing really, like, great about it, I would say. Like, there's nothing that stands out as being like, this is so cool. It's kind of just like a platforming game with a funny twist. But, you know, for what it is, it's good. Deltarune. Now, this feels literal garbage data. It feels weird to rate because obviously we only have chapters 1 and 2. But right now, it's peak fiction. I mean, I don't think it's going to end up getting ruined. That would be kind of crazy. But there's like almost nothing I can complain about in Deltarune. And in fact, where's Undertale? Because I know it's here too. It almost makes Undertale... I think it has to make Undertale fit here. Because the battle system in Deltarune is so much better, okay? Yeah, and the style, like, the visuals as well, stick to that, like, classic pixely sort of, like, unpolished look sometimes, but they are a huge upgrade to Undertale. Even though the style in Undertale was intentional, I can't deny that Deltarune looks way better. And hey, I just think Deltarune is also better paced. Because, I mean, it's already the length of Undertale, basically, if you go through and do everything. So, yeah. I still love Undertale, don't get me wrong. I think I even like Undertale more than Deltarune still, personally. But in terms of the actual games, I think Deltarune is a huge step up, which is great. Because, I mean, again, we're only in chapters 1 and 2. By the time we get to the end of the story, I might probably like it more than Undertale. So, Crypt of the Necrodancer. I've played some of this game, okay? And I played all of Cadence of Hyrule. That's what made me go back and get Crypt of the Necrodancer. But I never actually got very far, so you know what? I'll just put it in here. Eternal Step. This was my introduction to the roguelike genre. A genre I notoriously am not a huge fan of. And I'm not saying it's this game's fault, but this is a very bare bones roguelike. Where basically there's a lot of cheesy hitboxes from what I remember. Again, 7 years ago, I could be totally wrong. Let's see, how much did Eternal Step cost? I remember thinking like, oh, I should play this on the channel back when I first downloaded it. So it must have been around 2014, because it's when I was starting YouTube. Not this channel, but in general. And I was like, I should play this because it's like a cool game, and it could be like, you know, awesome later. This is the first game that's had a mixed review of all the games that we've seen. It's $10.99. Okay. Interesting. I don't know why I shelled out $10 for this. Maybe it was free to play originally and changed the price. Weak graphics and awful sound. Yeah, there's some issues definitely in terms of balance and hitboxes in this game, but it's still cool. So, I mean, it's definitely playable. Gary's Mod. I've played around in Gary's Mod a lot, but I never actually played any of the games in it because I was intimidated. I didn't get in on the ground floor with Gary's Mod, obviously. So every time I'd go into like a game mode, I would be the one who was the least experienced, and I felt like I was letting my team down every time. And I didn't know how any of the mechanics worked for stuff like prop hunt and all that, so I'd always get caught, and I was like, I don't know, I'll just play something else. And that's kind of what happened. But I did like play around with like the free sandbox mode areas quite a bit before downloading RPG Maker, and then that's what absorbed all of my time. So Danganronpa 1 literal garbage, am I right, everybody? Okay, obviously this game is not as good as the sequels, just by nature of being the first one and being sort of limited by being on the PlayStation Portable. But I still think it has the best atmosphere of any of the Danganronpa games. And I still think it has the best overall character trajectories. Let's just put it that way. Like, every character feels purposeful in Danganronpa 1. There's almost nobody who feels like they're just kind of there. And I know that's crazy to say in a game with Toko, who does basically nothing, and Yasuhiro, whose literal personality trait is doing nothing. But Yasuhiro being a stupid dumbass is fairly in line with what you'd expect. Like, you don't want everybody to be super competent, because then it makes it seem like it's not a huge feat when these characters solve these mysteries, which I feel like kind of gets lost in later games. You'll have a character like Miyu who predicts all the plot points correctly by accident, you know? Like, that's funny, but also it makes the accomplishments of Shuichi and everybody else feel a little bit less impressive, let's say. Whereas in this game, Kyoko and Byakuya really feel like smart, you know? Like, I really get that they are really intelligent. Even if Byakuya cheats sometimes in the similar way to, like, Kokichi or Nagito, where they just see what happens, so that's why they're smarter than you during the case. But it definitely gets worse as the series goes on. So why am I putting it in this thing? It sounds like I really like this game more than the other two. No. No. The minigames in this game almost all suck. The only one I wish would have kept going forward is the rhythm game Bullet Time Battle. just because I like rhythm games. That's like it. And the plot can be pretty silly at some points, especially considering the main villain of this story really only gets established in the sequels. Almost non-existent in Danganronpa 1 as a character. As a plot device, sure, but as a character, no, not really. So, definitely some problems. Where's the rest of Danganronpa? I really thought I was going to go on a Danganronpa's thing. Let's do that. Okay. Danganronpa. This is the only game that might actually end up in literal garbage data. Ultra Despair Girls had such a great premise, but oh my god, is it the worst game I've ever played. That's not true. I have played worse games. I mean, look, we've got Kyle Simulator coming up, okay? But in terms of being like a full, like, AAA sort of developed game, and it being this sort of monotonous and boring, and the story being so bad. Like, there's some interesting aspects to the story. The fact that the villains are kids, interesting. And they have, like, a point about the world maybe needing a reset button pressed on it. Sure, that's conceptually interesting. But everything surrounding it, and, like, the actual plot, it's incorrigible, okay? And I never want to think about it again. It's such a shame that Toko's only good characterization is in this mess. Even, like, Komaru as the main character gets, like, no characterization. She's just, like, the protagonist, and that's it. It's really sad. Danganronpa 2, okay, this is the best one. This is fairly universally agreed, I would say, probably. Great cast of characters. Still a bit of an intimidating atmosphere, because you've got these islands that are completely sequestered off from the rest of the world. And it feels really like, you know, that there's only 16 people here and nobody else could just randomly show up, you know? This is where Danganronpa started getting way less grounded. Like, Danganronpa 1, it's still got Monokuma and stuff where it's, like, weird. And there's some things that don't really make consistent sense. But this is the game where Danganronpa starts getting really goofy in terms of, like, oh yeah, one of the executions is a missile that sends the character to space. It's like, okay. And in Danganronpa 1, there was a rocket ship which sent a character to space. But it felt way more visceral, okay? It felt like they actually thought about what that would be like. Comes back as bones, okay? In Danganronpa 2, it's just like, bye, and you just watch the character fly away. Huh. But it works because of what Danganronpa 2 is. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it's something that V3 does not have going for it, and yet it keeps this really goofy, over-the-top tone. So that's why I have to put it in some issues, but still great. Obviously, V3 is the best visually. It's the best in terms of soundtrack. And I honestly think it might be the best in terms of minigames, too. I think the only one that kind of stinks is Mind Mine, which feels really forced. But Danganronpa 2 still has weird Hangman's Gambit that I don't particularly like. But overall, in terms of the actual plot, which this is basically a visual novel, so the plot is very important, Danganronpa 2 has the best one, probably, and the best characters, even if they aren't utilized to their fullest potential, which annoys me a lot. Okay? So, yeah. Doki Doki Literature Club. I really don't know where to put this. Obviously, this was another big YouTuber game, so I saw it first before I played it. Or I saw the twist first, and then I played it. I was like, okay, what happens after that? And the whole world, like, resets? What the hell? Yeah. So... I think this is probably where it lands. Honestly, it's really hard to describe why I don't want to put it in Peak Fiction. Because I think it sets out to it accomplishes what it is set out to accomplish very well. I think maybe my only big issue is that it feels fast. Is that a way to say it? Like, okay, the first route, first time you play the game, there's like a lot of build up to the horror elements of it, right? And then after that, it's just like sitting in the horror elements forever. It would have been interesting to allow for the player, let's say, instead of trying to figure out exactly how that relationship works, for the player to be able to make different choices based on what they'd already seen the first time through, right? But that's not really what happens. Different things happen, but it's because the villain is manipulating those things to happen. It'd be very interesting because a lot of people try to do it, right? Like in the playthroughs that I watched back in the day, I remember distinctly people after seeing the twist and realizing like, oh, who's the villain in this scenario, trying very hard to like do something about it, and it's not possible. You know, it's very on rails. It feels like this game needed 2 endings and it only has 1. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I actually haven't played the DLC, so I have no idea what that adds. But I did not hear about there being any sort of like advances on the plot. It's just like extra content with the characters, I think. So that's cool. I actually like these characters quite a bit. They're kind of intentionally tropey, right? But I feel like the twists put on them for the sake of the horror makes them very interesting in a lot of ways. So yeah. Also, I gotta be honest, okay? Omori, better handling of the topic of suicide than Omori. I'll be honest. So I'm just putting Omori here as well. Honestly, Omori might be here. And that's me being extra hard on it because this game was made for me, kind of, in a way. Like, I'd been anticipating this game since like a year into its development, and it took like a decade to come out. So I had a lot of expectations that might be weighing it down in this list. But for one of the big problems I have is that the gameplay feels like very played out at a certain point. It's like the opposite of the Doki Doki Literature Club problem, where it feels like I have too much that I'm given to do at the point where the horror should be taking over, you know? The entire Last Resort section. Why does it exist? It feels like it says nothing about the narrative at that point. And the Sweetheart section is so long for no good reason. Other than the developer probably liked Sweetheart a lot. Which, you know what? She's a very funny character. But I did not need 4 battles with that one Sprout Mole Knight guy, okay? That's all I'm saying. And like a dungeon full of bears. So the gameplay-wise, a few things could have been tightened up, probably. Plot-wise, I'm still pissed about the final twist. I still am. The game spends its entire runtime building up this thing and actually doing a really good job of unpacking it in a way that I felt was like more than you'd expect from a game like this even. And I was quite happy with it. And I was ready for sort of the tearful conclusion where, you know, we focus on our main character and how this grief has totally like ruined everything for them. And that's really not what happens. Instead, the game shifts, and now the main character is like far less important, it feels like, after the secret is told. It's like, okay, now it's the other character's reactions that matter, which feels wrong to me, okay? That's all I'm saying. Also, this is a game where the bad ending feels a little forced. Like, if you screw up even a little, you get this bad ending. You get a bad ending, rather. Um, and I guess what I'm saying is, okay, there's two routes you can take, and they both have a different ending. Those are fine. It's just the ones in the middle where you do one thing a little wrong by accident, and then you have to play through a whole section again. It's a little annoying. But I mean, it's still a beautiful game. And it is still very heartfelt in terms of the story, up until the point where I feel like it gets ruined. So that's my thoughts on it. This is a very personal problem for me, probably. So don't take it too seriously, but I still enjoyed my time with the game. You can watch the whole playthrough of it on my channel. Dead by Daylight. Never actually played it. I think I opened it and the menu was so confusing, I couldn't figure out how to get into a game, and then I quit. I wasn't really that invested in it to begin with, obviously. I think it was on sale for very cheap. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll play this with some friends. And I never ended up doing that. So, Death Road to Canada. This is a cool game. Not super deep. I'm going to have to start speeding up on a lot of these that I don't have a lot of thoughts to say on them. Though, to be fair, the Jackbox section will be very fast. Death Road to Canada, it's cool. It's quirky. It's great. I feel like it's not perfect, though, you know? Dude Simulator 3. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea. I remember Kyle Simulator, okay? This is a game that is basically like a Unity sandbox slot where you can drive a car through a wall and punch drywall. It's something. But yeah, not a lot. I didn't even know I had Don't Starve, okay? I must have bought it in a sale and totally forgot about it. Fall Guys, I feel like I have to put this in It's Playable. It was cool for like 1 week. As soon as you get the like crown, it's over. It feels like this isn't a game where I feel like you're building up skill a lot of the time. Like as soon as you get the games, it's done. Like there's no like different strategies you can take. There's an optimal strategy, and once you accomplish it and get the goal, there's no point in playing anymore. I think if this had some sort of more intense friends mode, where you could like just play it with a party of your friends, that might have kept it alive longer. But as it stands, it's pretty much dead. Jedi Fallen Order. This is another game I had no idea I owned. Apparently I bought it 2 months ago in a sale, so good for me. Fallout 4. Now I did try to play this, but it was actually too hard on my PC back in the day. So I could probably play it again now, but I really have no desire to. I own Fallout New Vegas now, and even that I'm still a little on the fence with. I really like Fallout New Vegas, but the RPG format with guns, I'm just not a huge fan of. Game Dev Tycoon, very playable. Nothing too deep or special about it, but it's a good time. Genesis Project, haven't played that yet. That's definitely a contender for something to play on a stream or something, maybe. Missing Translation. Okay, let's see how much this game cost. I remember liking this one a lot more than the other three we've talked about so far that were very unknown. Okay, Missing Translation. Store page. This was free to play, okay. I mean, it's still free to play. You can play it right now if you want. The idea is you're like in a town. It's sort of pixel arty, but you can't read any of the signs or speak the dialogue of any of the other NPCs, and you kind of just have to figure out what's going on. I don't remember much more than that, but there's another game that came out rather recently with the same concept that people really liked as well. What was it even called? The Tunic, right? Is that what it's called? The Fox Zelda clone kind of game? I think for free, this is, I don't remember enough is the problem. For free, I would say give it a shot if it sounds interesting to you. Grand Theft Auto 5, same thing as Fallout 4. I bought it in a sale. PC wasn't good enough to play it. So, sad, I guess. Hades! The only roguelike I've ever enjoyed, I think. But it's still a roguelike, so not really my jam. I hate doing things over in a game. Like, I will restart a game like Deltarune or Pokemon or Zelda multiple times over the years. But if you were like, okay, it's a game where you play through the Great Deku Tree 5 times before you're finally good enough to make it to another area, and then even if you die there, you have to play through the Great Deku Tree again. I think that highlights my problem with this genre. And I'm glad a lot of people like it, and I'm glad a lot of these games are getting made and that they're good. The only thing that made me keep playing Hades was that I like Greek mythology. And it's a cool representation of it. I still never beat it. I got to like Warriors Hell. What's it called? I got Valhalla stuck in my head. That's not correct. But where the warriors go in the underworld, the souls of the warriors. And I died to something there, I think. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that again. Halo, the Master Chief Collection. This is kind of cheating. But I think any Halo game you presented to me, other than maybe Halo 2, maybe, or Halo 4. I don't think Halo 4 is in this collection, though. Oh, but it probably is, because it's the Master Chief Collection. I honestly don't even remember. Halo 4, not a huge fan of. Halo 2 has some issues, but I still think it's really good. Halo 1, Combat Evolved, and Halo 3, and Halo Reach, honestly. All 3 of those games, peak fiction. Like, just in general. Like, on this tier list, yes, but also in terms of everything that exists, I think those games are worth playing for anybody. I have very fond memories of them, and I just recently replayed Halo Reach and had a really good time playing it. It's great. Kind of cheating, but then again. Half-Life 1. Now, I did play a bit of Half-Life 1, because I was like, what's all this hype about? And I didn't really like it back then. But I honestly, I didn't even get that far, so I can't really judge it. Hiveswap Friend Sim? Yeah, I haven't played that yet. I think that came in a bundle with the other Homestuck stuff that I bought in case I ever want to try it. Impossible Quest? I definitely played this. I remember nothing about it. So maybe if I look at the Steam page, I'll remember. This is one of those Impossible Game type ripoffs. Or it might be made by the same people. I honestly don't know. Yeah, it's literally just like the Impossible Game or whatever. Does it cost money? Probably not. It's probably free. No, it's $3. Well, it's $2.59, but you know what I mean. Sure. I mean, it's not even really a game. I'll put it in garbage data. Phasmophobia. Okay, this is definitely a game that I really like, but has huge issues. I talked about this on a tier list a while ago. Phasmophobia, in its original beta, like its first form when it was released to the world, was one of my favorite games of that year. It was unintentionally hilarious sometimes, which is a fun factor in a cooperative horror game like this. I don't know if this was on a stream or something, but Saturn and I were talking about this. We were talking about how it's scary when you're alone, but it's funny when you're with other people, like in the game. So like if you get separated from your group, it becomes like a horror game. But as long as you're together with everyone else, if somebody dies, it's more silly than scary, right? Which is like a really great balance to thread the needle on. Problem being, it got readjusted to patch out a bunch of like really top tier player strategies, which like your average player probably is not going to implement. Like there was something called looping, where essentially they could trick the ghost into following them around in a circle and mess with its pathing so it could never reach them. And so they added something so the ghost gets faster the longer it's chasing you, which sounds like a great solution. But unfortunately, it also means that if you're not an experienced player and you're just trying to get to a hiding spot, but you don't know where one is, the ghost is probably just going to kill you. Like, it got to the point where if you are not in a hiding spot almost immediately after the ghost spawns, you're just dead. And it made the game really frustrating for, I think, someone like me who was not trying to min-max the strategies and was just trying to have a good time. I have no idea what the game's like now. It's been like a year since I've played it, but it used to be very fun. So I hope it still is in some capacity. Okay, let's get all the Jackboxes out of the way because we are getting to that. I'm missing one. Oh, there's 8. Okay, there we go. Okay, we play Jackbox a lot on stream. I feel like I can rate their value pretty well. Jackbox Party Pack 3 has only one game in it you'd want to buy the pack for, and it's TKO. I do think it's the better version of TKO, but I don't think it's really worth the time at this point. I guess there's also Gaspionage. It's kind of cool, but there are similar games to it later. Party Pack 4, this might be the... This might be the one I think we like the most. It's got Fibbage 3, it's got Survive the Internet, it's got Monster Seeking Monster, and Bracketeering. I feel like all 4 of those games are pretty good. Civic Doodle is literally the worst. Bracketeering isn't great, but it's still fun. And we have a lot of fun with Monster Seeking Monster, even though a lot of people don't like it. Fibbage 3 and Survive the Internet are objectively good games, like in terms of Jackbox games. Party Pack 6 has really one good game in it, but it's like the best game in the entire franchise, which is Trivia Murder Party 2. I know a lot of people like Push the Button. I'm personally not a huge fan of it. It feels very random which team gets the advantage, if you know what I mean. Like, sometimes... if the alien team is coordinated, it's impossible to win, essentially, because of the amount of hacks they have and all that stuff. I just feel like it's unbalanced in certain player numbers. I feel like in a smaller group where you've got one alien, it might actually be more balanced. Versus when you have 2 aliens or 3 aliens, then it just becomes, like, impossible. Because you have to get it exactly right on your first try, too. So... there's nothing like in Among Us where you can just vote somebody out, and if they're not the killer, then you've basically narrowed stuff down. There's nothing like that in this game. So yeah, I don't know. I really like Trivia Murder Party 2, though. It's carrying it way up this list. 7 has Quiplash 3, Blather Round, and Champed Up, as well as Talking Points, which is pretty good. It just has the devil in the details weighing it down a little bit. I feel like I can put that in peak fiction. It's not really fiction, but whatever. 8 also has some really great games. We got Job Job, another one of the best Jackbox games ever. We have a lot of fun with Wheel. I think Drawful Animate is underrated. And Pole Mine is also very good. The only problem is Weapons Drawn, but, I mean, it's still an interesting game, even if it's very cheesable. 9, other than Nonsensory... oh, but there's also Quicksort. Okay, so Nonsensory and Quicksort are both good in this pack, but the others... I'll put it in very playable. And, oh, that's it. Okay. Please Don't Touch Anything. Very simple game, but, you know, fun. It's like a puzzle-solving game. Master Duel. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. It's really hard for me to rank this, because this is just a card game simulator. Honestly, it's pretty generous in terms of what you can get in order to craft cards, which is nice. It kind of just depends on how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is balance-wise at the moment, whether this game is fun or not. Like, right now, personally, I'm not having a huge amount of fun with it whenever I play, which is very infrequently, but that's also because I don't like Fire King Snake Eye. So maybe when it goes to something a little bit better, it'll be more playable. But I only ever play meme decks anyway, so that's sort of a me problem as well. I'll put it in here. Monster Prom. A fun concept that I've just never really felt was perfect, you know? I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, I don't know. Multiverses. This is tough. It's playable. And I really like the gameplay of Multiverses, but it's in a tricky situation. Kind of like Marvel Snap. Where's Marvel Snap? Where balance is all over the place, and there's a lot of monetization things keeping me from putting it any higher. So, there we are. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, that's peak fiction. I don't feel like I have to explain. Never split the party, never actually played. I bought this to do some streams with people. Just never ended up happening. So, maybe in the future. Oh, sir! Oh, sir! Insult Simulator. This is also pretty much not a game. It's essentially just you're constructing a funny sentence to try to get the most points in a Scrabble-esque way, if I remember correctly. It's fine, but there's not a whole lot of content there. There's like 3 levels. It'll take you like 30 minutes, and then you're done forever. Out There Somewhere. This is like a weird platformer game. I don't remember enough about it. This video has been going way too long for me to look more up about it. Okay. Passepartout. A Starving Artist. It's a very funny game where you get to sell memes to people. Yeah, I can put it in here. Why Am I Dead at Sea? Okay, this is another game that was very significant for me. It's the first sort of murder mystery game I ever played. The concept is you are a ghost and you have to possess the other people on this boat in order to find out who killed you. And it gets pretty damn dark, like to the point where I don't know if I'd even be comfortable playing it on YouTube. But I still think it's a good game. So I'm going to put it in here. Town of Salem 2. I like Town of Salem 2, but I also don't like it. I think some of the most fun games I ever had in Town of Salem 1, which this is another social deduction game like Among Us if you didn't know, were because there were 3 factions facing off against each other, which is Mafia, Coven, and Town. And in Town of Salem 2, they took out the Mafia, so now it's just Coven versus Town with random neutral evils that mess things up, right? And yes, technically, you could count the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which are like death and war and famine, as a faction. But the issue is, you're not guaranteed to have more than one of them in any game, which I suppose is also true of Mafia or Coven in Town of Salem 1, but it's far more likely you'll have at least 2 in that game. And they don't really communicate with each other, so it doesn't really feel like a faction. It feels like 2 neutrals that shook hands, you know what I mean? And that's kind of a bummer to me, because it makes the game feel way simpler. And I get their goal was to essentially eliminate the awkwardness of getting to the end of like almost every game and then having someone be the one who decides the winner. Like unless it was a steamroll, in Town of Salem 1, there was always some random neutral who had either already won or was a survivor or something who was going to pick which team won just based on what they feel like. But I feel like that was such an integral part of the game, because it meant that you had to respect neutrals as an evil faction. Like, you couldn't just go and kill the survivor because you'd want the survivor to side with you later. And some people would go out of their way to kill survivors just so there's no chance for that situation to ever happen. It's an interesting wrinkle of the game that is now just gone completely. But not really, because Town of Salem 1 still exists. You can still play it. My only issue is that most of the people that actually like Town of Salem have moved on to Town of Salem 2. And now Town of Salem 1 is just a lot of horrible people. There's already a lot of horrible people in Town of Salem, okay, who play this game. Say some things I cannot repeat on YouTube, nor would I even want to repeat. But it's kind of the nature of a totally anonymous game like this. So you kind of just have to take it with a grain of salt, with a full chat feature, and like you have to talk to other people. Generally, like the majority of people are fairly good in games like this, and they'll be like, hey, vote that guy out for being an asshole. So yeah, it's a give and take. I like Town of Salem more, but I feel like it's less playable than Town of Salem 2 now. It's a little sad. The Persona games. Oh, well, here's my talk about the Persona games. I haven't played them. I've been saving Persona 4 specifically for the channel. I played a little bit of Persona 5 back in the day, but never played Royal, so that's totally new to me as well. These are big contenders for a potential next game to play on the channel. It's another character-focused, story-driven game for me to dig into and do voices for a little bit. Makes sense. The only problem is, oh my god, it's an RPG, but I'm sure we can get around that. Pester Quest, this is the other Homestuck thing I have not played. Long Live Santa. That you can tell that's garbage data. I don't even have to explain it to you. It's a game where you play as Santa Claus and you drive a sleigh, and if you hit a wall, you crash and die. Plasma Being. This is a really weird platforming game. I don't remember much about it. But I don't remember it being bad either. I actually think I liked this one. Actually, oh man, this is tough. Because was it that game that I liked, or was it Out There Somewhere that I liked? Look at how similar they look. I'm putting them together. One of those is very cool, and the other one is just okay. Portal 2? Yeah, that's Peak Fiction. I don't feel like I need to explain that either. You know about Portal. Still never played Portal 1, though, somehow. I didn't know I actually owned it on Steam. What other ones are very easy for me to place? Skyrim. Okay, this is Skyrim. I don't really have to talk too much about it. Big issues, but still very playable. Sims 4 is garbage data. I also feel like I don't need to explain that. Sims 3 is pretty good with some performance is probably the biggest issue Sims 3 has going for it, or going against it. And maybe art style. It's a little ugly. Sims 4 is so pretty, but you can't do fucking anything in it. Stardew Valley, Peak Fiction. Again, I don't feel like I have to explain too much there. It's just probably the best farming sim ever made. Ever. And this is from a guy who was a Harvest Moon fan for a long time. And I think it's better than any Harvest Moon game ever released. Okay, Nick All-Star Brawl 2. This is kind of playable. It doesn't have the monetization issues of Multiverses, but instead it has jank. I guess Multiverses also has jank, but yeah. Worldbox, this is a great game with not a lot you can do in it. So I'll put it in playable. I haven't played Shantae yet. Downloaded Shantae, like, oh, everybody likes Shantae, I should play it. Haven't played Scribblenauts yet either. Is there any other game I have downloaded here that I have never played? No, that's it. Okay. Let's do the competitive sort of like friend games you play with your friends. Okay, Worms. This is a pretty fun game, but I think it is a little bit dated in a lot of ways. Control scheme being one. Feels really gunky to play at times. Risk Factions is just Risk. There's some funny twists to it, and it is pretty fun, honestly, but it is just Risk. There's not a lot to stand out there. Shell Shock. This is a pretty cool game, but it's got less sauce than Worms. You know, it's like it's kind of like a Worms game a little bit. Less movement options and more neon lights. But Worms has way more fun to it, whereas Shell Shock feels way more competitive. But I feel like in a game like this, you want the fun, because you're playing with friends most of the time. RimWorld is Peak Fiction. I don't think I need to really explain that either. It's just like the craziest game of its genre in terms of what it does, and it does it all well somehow. Stick Fight the game. It's a game. It's a pretty fun one with friends, honestly, because it's very random sometimes, and you can just like you can die so easily in this game. But it gets old pretty quick is the problem. I need a new tier. Sorry, I forgot. I would need a new tier. Make it blue, I guess. Yeah, for Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. Okay, we're good. We're good to keep going. Okay, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. It's a game. I feel like there's a lot less strategy to it than it seems on the surface, but it's still pretty fun. Planet Coaster. I like this game so much for like the first month of playing it, and then after that I could never play it again. So I'll put it in A tier, basically. Oxygen not included. This is the exact same thing as Planet Coaster. I had a lot of fun with it for like a month, and then I could never touch it again. So, sure. Project Zomboid. This is a game that has a really cool concept, and I like it a lot, but the controls, the actual controls of the gameplay, I hate them. They feel so unresponsive, and it's probably intentional. It's meant to evoke like the tank controls zombie game type thing, and it's not tank controls, thankfully. But it's just feels so sluggish. I just can't. I can't deal with it personally. Spore, this is another game with big issues. It crashes a lot. How many poor, unfortunate souls have I lost to a crash in Spore, where their entire species was wiped out? But being able to create your own creature and living in the creature stage, and then the space stage, and the cell stage, those are all good. But the ones where it randomly turns into an RTS for a while, those are pretty bad. It's clear they didn't really know what they were doing there. And yeah, the crashes are really the biggest problem the game has, though. I do not remember what you have to win the game is. Terraria, this is another great game with big issues. I've talked about it before in another tier list, but I really like Terraria, but the section of going from hard or pre-hard mode after the Wall of Flesh to hard mode feels like just torture. The amount of grinding you have to do in order to be able to make progress after that feels like you're basically starting the game over. And instead of being able to explore a brand new world and, finding new things that constantly make you feel like you're making big progression, you're exploring places you've already probably seen. And you're dying way more because the enemies have gotten way stronger. And your progression is just like points in armor for the most part. You might get like a couple cool weapons before you fight the mechanical bosses, but most of the cool new weapons come after Plantera. So this whole section between the Wall of Flesh and Plantera just sucks ass. I'm sorry, that's all I can say. And it's part of the reason why I always fall off of Terraria before, fighting the Moon Lord. I'm just so sick. Like, after I beat Plantera, I feel like, ugh, okay, the game's over. Starbound. This is a Terraria-like game, but in space, with, like, different races of aliens you can be. It's very cool. But also, it feels like it's not Terraria. It's really trying to be Terraria. And I feel like it's got the worst aspects of Terraria in terms of the grindiness and stuff I just described, but without, like, having a world of your own, sort of. I mean, you do, but not really. It's also been a long time since I played, so maybe I just sucked at it. Who knows? Okay, final thing. We can talk about A Normal Lost Phone. Probably the most important game I've ever played in terms of changing the trajectory of who I am as a person. I'm not going to spoil this game, but let me just say, it was eye-opening for me at a teenage age. I was very judgmental, let's say, at that time of my life, growing up in a small town. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but you should play this game if you can. If it sounds interesting. I actually don't know how it's aged either, because I played it so long ago. But let's just see. How much does A Normal Lost Phone cost? Oh, what? Where is it? Oh, it's under N, isn't it? Because it wouldn't count the in the title. Yeah. It's sort of like a mystery game. You guys like mystery games. I'm sure you'd like it. Oh, this came out in 2017? No way this came out in 2017. I feel like I played this in like 2016, 2014 even. That's crazy. Yeah, well, still a good game. Okay, to be fair, it was January of 2017, so it was like halfway through the school year. That might be why I feel like it was so long ago. Yeah. Anyway. That's it. That's my list. So in terms of contenders for potential next series on the channel, obviously something like Crypt of the Necrodancer doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I mean, it could. Jedi Fallen Order, if I can get it to play on my PC, I wouldn't probably guarantee that for you, but the Persona games definitely have a good chance of being contenders. What was the AI Somnium Files could definitely work. Honestly, Portal 1 could work too. Shantae could work if you really just want to see me play that. It's very different from what I usually play on the channel, but you know. Or like Pester Quest or Hive Swap Friend Sim. I don't even know really what these games are, so it'd be up to you Homestuck fans to tell me if that is worth making a series on. But I think at least Pester Quest might be. Is that the one where you like talk to all of the characters and have like a little story arc with them? Because that feels like it could be interesting now that I've read the whole story pretty much. But if you guys also wanted to see me do something like, I don't know, play... where is it? I'm looking... It must be around here then. Oh, no, wait. You can play... I could play Chrono Trigger again. I would not be opposed to doing that. Or you could torture me and make me play The Sims 4. I suppose. Thanks for watching this video. And, yeah. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.